All right, all praise to the Most High. It's your brother, Guerrilla Hebrew, aka Guerrilla Hebrew, coming back at y'all with episode 3 of Guerrilla 316. It's been a minute, been on a hiatus, so I'm back podding. Just did It's a Guerrilla episode 15. Look for the next Beige Rage to come out. I mean, we just back podding, man. I'm in Atlanta now. I'm settled and I'm in the groove to where I want to get back started. Podding, things a little bit less hectic, so I'm in an environment that's a little bit more conducive to do these extracurriculars like podcasts, talk about, things I like to talk about outside of my teachings. And Guerrilla 316, of course, my wrestling podcast is, one of the main things, especially lately. I've been watching wrestling so much lately, man. And also I got a couple guests I'm going to be bringing on, not this episode, but probably in the next one. I got so much to talk about on this one. I feel like I just want to get this out of the way before I bring the guests in. It's a lot of things I want to talk about. I want to start with something though. So I was watching or not watching, listening to the main podcast I listen to, especially wrestling, the only wrestling podcast I really listen to, which is called Keeping It 100 with Konan, right? You got Konan, you got Disco Inferno, Disco Duck, Glen Gilberti, all the various names he go by. I forget the white boy name. Used to have KG on there. Now they got a JoJo. Right, good guess. Always great. Shout out to Keeping It 100. Shout out to my man K-Dog, number one, first and foremost, for a multitude and plethora of reasons. But so I was watching, I was listening, and what happened was this. I want to go to the YouTube, matter of fact, because I was listening to, I want to say episode. Let me check my iTunes. My fault. Podcast. Episode 148. I was listening to episode 148. Disco referenced their YouTube channel, right? So, and the most popular videos on their YouTube channel. My fault. So what I did was I went to their YouTube channel and checked out the most popular videos, right? So I stopped mid-podcast to listen to excerpts of earlier podcasts. And one video that stuck out to me was a video called, where is that? I just watched this junk. Oh, Konan on Vince McMahon being racist. I have firsthand stories of him doing that. And first, the woman, whatever woman was on the episode, she introduced Vince being racist and sexist to the conversation. Disco hops in and immediately interjects, something that Disco likes to do. I want to preface this before I even really get into it. I want to say this about Disco and Konan. Both of them are some of my favorite. Were some of my favorite people in WCW in the early 2000s. I didn't really start watching WCW until like 2000, 2001. So until like the end of the race. But that was when they were featured prominently. You had the Filthy Animals, etc. Right? So, I like them a lot. I'm going to tell you how much I like them, right? Or how much influence they had on my young life. Me, right? We had built a wrestling ring in my backyard. So we had our own backyard wrestling promotion, me, kids from the neighborhood, right? So when I used to go to school at lunch, we'd be in the lunch line, and I had a homeboy named Tomas, right? A Mexican homeboy. And it used to be me, Tomas, and my best friend, Dayron. We used to be in that lunch line, right? And Tomas would be cutting promos. Right, and he was T-Dog, Dayron was D-Dog, and I'm A-Dog. Boom, and in my whole persona, my gimmick in my backyard wrestling promotion was predicated upon the promos that he used to cut. So I used to be A-Dog, right? So anyway, And it was all, he was basically cutting a Konan promo. You know, he's a young Mexican brother. He sees a Latino brother on the screen, and he was emulating that. And that had an influence on me to where that dictated my gimmick as a young kid in wrestling. So there's that. Now, fast forward, or not even fast forward, my contemporary, my little brother, 3 years younger than me, he also had his own gimmick. His gimmick was directly influenced by Disco Inferno, Glen Gilberti, because he liked the name Disco Inferno, so he changed his name to Raging Inferno, right, like a raging fire. So as we can see here, Disco and Konan had influences on me formidably young in life as far as my perception of wrestling and what I liked in wrestling, as well as my little brother. So I want to preface it with that. I like Disco. People consistently burying Disco on the podcast, and he's like to run a joke. He's like the heel of the show. So I understand everything he says on the show is not necessarily a reflection of his true feelings. I understand that. Also, he may be in a little bit of denial of his own blackness. Because you know what they say. If you're Sicilian, that means your grandmother fucked a nigga, right? I mean, it's what they say. I actually, if y'all just Google his real name, Glen Gilberti. Google that right now. Go to images. There's a picture of him with his arm around two white girls. And I'm talking about he's looking black as hell in between them two white girls. I'm telling you that now. Okay, that got a real Sicilian tan. But I digress. I just wanted to preface that to say I don't have nothing against Disco like that. I don't dislike Disco like that. I was entertained by him. I'm still entertained by him through the podcast, but I was entertained by him as an in-ring competitor. He had enough influence that my brother named his gimmick after Disco. And my gimmick was named after Konan. So there's that, right? Anyway, so now I want to just deal with understanding racism in wrestling. Understanding racism, not just in wrestling, but in general. But we're going to go into wrestling in particular. But I just want to give an outline because here's what happened. The female that they had, the female guest, she introduced that Vince is both a sexist and a racist. Disco challenges that. And he oftentimes challenges things. He's not wrong for challenging them because here's what happens. Oftentimes, people speak things so much without going into the facts on it, that it just becomes widely accepted, right? It becomes so widely accepted and embraced and not challenged, right? So when you're just going off the rhetoric of it, right? It could be as true as you want it to be. It could have all the facts substantiated, right? But when you're just going off the rhetoric and someone challenges the rhetoric and you have nothing to say, it makes your argument totally invalid, right? So when he challenges her, it's her duty to come with the facts, right? But he knows he's preying on the fact, and he's not wrong for preying on the fact. I do it in other instances as well. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people do this because it's a smart thing to do. People just say things without backing them up, even though they could be backed up and validated. But this individual, they're just repeating what they heard, so they don't have the facts to back it up. So you challenge them on it, and it invalidates them in the moment, right? I.e., perfect example. Jesus is Middle Eastern. Let's just take that argument, right? Jesus is Middle Eastern. Okay. So we have to now explore the historicity of the concept of the Middle East. When was that introduced to the world? When was that region of Israel that Israel lies in, when was that ever called the Middle East? That's a very modern concept. So him being Middle Eastern and associating that with people of Arabic descent is problematic. Because if you follow the biblical narrative, the people of Arabic descent are descendants of the son of Abraham named Ishmael. Jesus would be the son of Isaac, right? So to say that he would be of Arabic descent contradicts the very book that talks about him, right? But people would just go around, Jesus is Middle Eastern, Jesus is an Arab, not understanding how much sense that doesn't make. Also not understanding that, i.e., 2,000 years ago, the primary inhabitants of America were Native American, right? Now, in the year 2019, the primary people that live in the continental United States are Caucasian, right? Over 60% of the population. But now, if we go to the Middle East now, it's predominantly inhabited by people who you would call Arabs, right? Which Arab, people don't even know what Arab means. Arab means mixed, so it's an amalgamation of various Semitic peoples. Anyway, does that dictate, just because they're the predominant people there now, does that make them the predominant people 2,000 years ago? Of course not. The same way white people were not the predominant people in America 2,000 years ago, right? But people just say he was an Arab because they heard somebody else say it, and they just propagate it, right? So you have to challenge that. So Disco oftentimes challenges people that he knows are just simply regurgitating rhetoric. I don't knock her from that. That's great because it keeps people honest and it makes people actually know what the fuck they're talking about, right? I don't think that woman was quite qualified to articulate it in the proper way. But I believe I can shed a little bit more light on how Vince McMahon is in fact a racist, okay? First off, we have to understand racism. The Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, people who are regarded as white supremacists, white separatists, white nationalists, are truly not racist, right? They're racist at the lowest level of what it is to be racist. You see somebody calling somebody a nigger, a spick, a beaner, using racially insensitive language, etc. You look at that person as a racist because of the words that come out of their mouth. And they are racist on the surface. But real racists are racists that can implement their racism on an institutional level, right? There's an institution of racism that comes from a school of thought that is a far more sophisticated form of racism than that low-level, redneck, good old boy racism that you're used to, okay? So let me explain sophisticated and institutional racism. You may have heard people utilize this phraseology without qualifying it. Let's qualify and quantify it. Let's go into it, right? Institutional racism. Okay, let's take a look at institutional racism and how we could show it. Because institutional racism is racism in deed, not in word, in deed, meaning your deeds display your ideals of being racist versus just the things that you say come out of your mouth. Because we live in a PC era where people are very careful in what they say. Oh, I'm not racist. Oh, I have black friends. Oh, I have black employees. I work with black people. I'm cool. I got a black neighbor. I got a Mexican neighbor. Blase blah. People can say those things. But indeed, let's do it indeed. Some of these same people that got black friends or a black person they cool with or whatever, black employee, whatever, that same person wouldn't want a black man to marry their daughter or a Mexican man to marry their daughter, right? Because that's showing their racism there. Because it's dealing with preferential treatment. That's how you're racist indeed and racist in a more sophisticated level. I'll further elaborate and I'll use the WWE as an example. Kofi Kingston won the WWE Championship on April 7th, 2019, WrestleMania, right? Okay. So the last black person to win said title, right, which is everyone knows is the A title. Not just the last black person, but the only other black person to win a title, last won it January 27th, 2013. 6 years. It's been 6 years since a black person has held that title. 6 years. Before that, same guy won it. The Rock, right? July 21st, 2002. Right? July 21st, 2002. So, Kofi just won it, right? He's the current reigning WWE champion. But before him, another black person had not held that belt for 6 years. Before that, that same black person, which is the only black person to hold it before Kofi, hadn't held that belt in 11 years, right? So total, we're talking about 17 years. So you mean to tell me in those 17 years, there was no other black person on that roster that you say was deserving of that title? You're saying that in 17 years, There's no other black person that was on the WWE roster, not only that was deserving of the title, but didn't have championship potential. You're saying that Kofi has not had championship potential in all these years he's been in WWE. Him nor any other black person in 17 years. I mean, anybody that's listening, can you honestly believe that? Because if that's the case, then Vince is not a racist. But if that's not the case, this is clear preferential treatment and racism. Clearly. There's no excuse as to why no other black person has held this belt in 17 years except The Rock and Kofi. And even before The Rock, which, okay, now, The Rock won 2002, but let's go to The Rock's first reign. Had to be, what, 99, 98? February 15, 99. January 1999. February 15, 98. Okay, that's The Rock's first reign. November 15th, 1998. Rock's first reign. So, when did the belt come out? Buddy Rogers, April 11th, 1963. So, the 35 years before The Rock had the belt, there was not a black person that was qualified, worthy, talented enough, or had championship potential. And after The Rock, 21 years since he first won his first belt, only one other black person has had that potential outside of him. Either we believe that or we believe Vince is racist. One of the two. See, and here's my thing. Let's go to reigns, right? All the combined reigns, right? The person with the most reigns is John Cena with 13. You mean to tell me in those 13 reigns now, he's 4 up on Randy Orton, which has 9 reigns, right? So John is the company man. If you still want to make him the person with the most reigns, you could have gave 3 of his reigns away to a deserving black man on that roster, right? And he's still been number 1 all-time in title reigns. But no, instead we're going to give John Cena the belt 3 more times, though all the grown men in the damn arena is booing him. Right? Then if you go to the reigns, John Cena and Randy Orton were playing hot potato or monkey in the middle with random people. Let's go back to 2013. Around that time. Hold on. Watch this. All you see, Cena, Daniel Bryan, Orton. Right? Then we got Cena, Sheamus, Orton. Cena, Sheamus, Cena, Batista, Cena, Sheamus, Orton. You mean to tell me in these repeat reigns, look at this. Orton, Cena, Sheamus. In all these repeat reigns, you mean to tell me there wasn't like a black guy we could have just handed that to, even as a transitional champion? There just wasn't. Henry couldn't have got it. Booker T couldn't have got it. Granted, they got that B title, that World Heavyweight title, which was carrying on the lineage of the WCW Championship, which had already had Booker T and Ron Simmons as champions of it before. So that wasn't nothing monumental that they won a championship that was already black before it got to that company, already held by black men before it got to WWE. That wasn't no big deal, and we all know that was the B title. There's not even, number one, it doesn't exist right now. The WWE title exists. The World Heavyweight Championship doesn't even exist, showing you how relevant it is. You mean to tell me, in all this time, in all these years, now, I combine, 17 plus 35, that's what? 52, so in 52 years at WWE, there hasn't been a black person deserving of that belt outside of 2. Then what? 3 Hispanics have held this belt. So now we got to do the same thing. In all these years, but 3 Latinos been worthy of holding this belt. Now we can't make the same argument about other ethnicities, and I'll explain why. Because there's not been a substantial amount of them represented in the wrestling business in the United States of America. There hasn't. But there has been an abundance of blacks and Latinos who have come up in these ranks Period. So, do I believe Vince is racist? Yes, indeed. Because only 2 black men and 3 Hispanic men have ever been worthy enough to be his champion in his eyes. We see that because those are the only people on this goddamn list of WWE champions. So yes, the proof is in the pudding. Vince McMahon is indefinitely a racist. And I'm going to tell you what's crazy. What's crazy is good old down south WCW, surface level, base level racism that everyone knew about, put the title on a black man, on 2 different black men, with no problem, before WWE could put their strap on 2 different black men. They only had it on 1 at that time, The Rock. See what I'm saying? That's crazy. But now look, devil's advocate. I'll play the other side. There's 3 guys. There's 3 brothers who competed in the WWE, who I strongly believe Vince was going to and had it made up in his mind that they were going to be world champions, WWE champions. Zeus, a.k.a. Debo, a.k.a. Tiny Lister. Why? Because he tells the story that he was going to be the champion, but Hulk Hogan's manager talked him out of it. So essentially, his agent, like his real life agent, his Hollywood agent, whatever, talked him out of it or did whatever. Vince was going to give him the belt. He talks about that on the interview he got with Rosenberg. So check that out. I believe Vince was going to give him that belt 92. But here Hogan's people screwed him out of it, which displays Hogan's racism, which is crazy because all the black guys talk about how cool Hogan was. Yet we hear how he's talking when ain't no black people around, right? Showing you racism indeed. Showing you indeed Debo gets screwed out of a title reign. Before he's even Debo when he's Zeus. He gets screwed out of a title reign. How many other people got screwed with a level of, how many other black men got screwed with, and Hispanic men got screwed with the level of creative control Hogan had? Oh wait, y'all had 4. It was 4 Latino champions, my fault. You got Ray, Alberto, Eddie. I forgot about Eddie. And you had what's my man? Pedro Morales, I believe, back in the day. Yeah, Pedro Morales. Boom. So you had so you mean to tell me wasn't but 6 blacks and Hispanics and all these years of wrestling that was deserving of a world title reign? That's madness. What was I at? What was my point before this? Whatever. Oh, Hulk screwing black men. Okay, yeah. So, boom, Zeus. Number 2, Ahmed Johnson. From the collective retelling by black men who were his peers in the company with him at his time, all but knew he was going to be WWE champion, and he screwed it up from having a bad attitude. Right? I believe Vince was going to put the strap on him. There was no reason for it not to. Ahmed had everything. Right? So Ahmed Johnson. And then 3, Bobby Lashley. Remember when he was getting built up at ECW, he was in the, the big angle with Trump at Mania, all that. I believe that Bobby Lashley was being bred to get the title also. So those 3, I think, through issues that were not Vince's fault, they didn't end up getting the title. But even if them 3 did, that's still only 5. You mean to tell me those 3, Rock and Kofi, were the only black men since 1963 who have been worthy of holding the WWE Championship? Either you believe that or you believe Vince is racist. One of 2 things. One of 2 things. Again, having, and I believe the woman touched on this, having a black employee does not make you racist. Have you ever heard of slavery? All of the employees of the slave master or the predominant employees of the slave master were black. And they were fervent racists, indeed, because they made people work for them for free. See what I'm saying? You have all kind of good old boy white men that'll hire Mexicans for cheap to get a job done and still hate Mexicans and still push for immigration reform. That doesn't make them not racist. So yes, he hires black people, he hires Hispanic people. He has to appeal to those people in the audience. He knows not just white people are going to watch, and blacks and Hispanics are the biggest consumers, so they need to identify with somebody. Right? I got another question for Glenn, and this is not just for Glen Gilberti, Disco. This is for anybody out there that doesn't believe Vince McMahon is racist. Here's my question. As a grown man who knows the business is a work, right? I'm going to restate these qualifiers. As a grown man that knows the business is a work, right? Have you ever cried because of the finish of a professional wrestling match? Simple question. As a grown man who knows it's a work, have you ever cried at the result, at the finish of a champion of any match in the history of wrestling? That's my question. Why do I ask this question? You know why? Because I cried like a baby watching Kofi win that title. I didn't watch it live. I watched it days later on the network, knowing the result, knowing going in that the people willed him into that title the same way years ago Daniel Bryan was willed into that title. I knew ahead of time he was going to get the strap just by knowing how things go, knowing how the business works. It was days later. It had already been said and done, and I still watched the WrestleMania replay and cried my eyes out like a baby, as a 28-year-old man that's 6'4", that got shot at 14 years old and didn't cry. A convicted felon, documented gang member, right now, right? And I cried like a baby watching Kofi win the title, and I already knew he was going to win it. And I know it's a work. I know somebody booked the finish. Why? Because I know what it means. I know what it means. I know what it means to me as an adult, and I know so much more what it means to the little black kids that still turn on wrestling every week, just like I used to do. I cried. Now my question is, Glenn, and anybody who thinks Vince McMahon is not a racist, when have you, as a grown man, privy of the fact that the business is a work, ever cried at the finish of a match? If you could show me you crying at the finish of a match because of how monumental the finish was, though you know it's a work, and you can answer everything else I said, I'll give my argument up. I'll give it up. But I'm going to be real with you. And let's go through a list here. So you mean to tell me Shad Gaspard was not championship material? You mean to tell me Marcus Corvan was not championship material? You mean to tell me Elijah Burke was not championship material? Because TNA thought so, and they had good title runs, or Elijah was at least a contender in TNA, right? Bobby Lashley had strong title runs in TNA, right? Jay Lethal had probably the strongest Ring of Honor championship run of all time. So you see a black champion works elsewhere in wrestling, but WWE never even wanted to give it a try, and of course, with only the exception of The Rock, then now Kofi. But that was by the will of the fans, the same way the fans willed Daniel Bryan into that top spot. They was never going to give Daniel Bryan that top spot, right? You mean to tell me Booker T and Mark Henry, they were worthy of the World Heavyweight title, the big gold belt, but they were never worthy of the WWE title? Neither of them, right? There's several black men that have been on that roster that have been championship material, championship worthy, and championship deserving. I'm not saying just anybody. I'm not saying put the strap on Titus O'Neil, right? No disrespect to that brother, but I'm gonna be real with you. He don't got enough charisma. But I think there were several other brothers that's been on that roster, and I just named a few that have been on that roster, especially Mark Henry and Booker T. Are you kidding? There's not even a question. You gave him the B title. Why couldn't you give him the A title? Reasonable question. Did Randy Orton and John Cena need to have all those runs? And I'll be honest with you, Kofi been ready for 10 years to hold that belt. As soon as they had that feud between Kofi and Randy, and Kofi was fucking up that car, if you remember, y'all remember what I'm talking about? Kofi was ready to hold that strap then. He was main event material. He had the charisma. He could be a badass when you weren't trying to make him into a Jamaican when he's from Ghana, even though most Jamaicans come from Ghana. So that's not even a huge problem. Big E, if you ask me, Big E just don't got the best mouthpiece. If you let Xavier talk to him, Big E could have had that belt. Who else on the roster right now? Let me see. I'm gonna tell you who else. You got some sleepers, but you got some guys on the roster right now that you need to work through the roster, but can certainly are certainly championship material. Okay, Cedric Alexander, Keith Lee. You just signed Shane Strickland, Ricochet, without a shadow of a doubt, Ricochet. So you got some guys now, and we can see if they're going to let this turn the tides or not. But you mean to tell me though, right? New Day been moving all this merch. You put those meaningless tag straps on them. You gave them to Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. So you know what that tells me? That them straps don't mean shit, right? They moved all this merch. One of them should have been had that strap, Big E or Kofi. If you and now you're at a point where it can go one or two ways, where you could turn Kofi heel and let the ego of him having the belt get to his head, turn him heel, turn Big E and Xavier against him, let Xavier be Big E's mouthpiece, and Xavier can get the strap. Or you could reverse it. Let Xavier or Big E be consumed by jealousy, turn on Kofi, and then Big E can get the strap that way. If you ask me, you got Lashley coming up. I know Rush got heat, which is bullshit. Big shout out Leo Rush. I know Rush got heat, but with Rush as a mouthpiece, Bobby Lashley can hold that title. We know he can't talk, so you got to have somebody talk for Bobby, but he's a top competitor. You know what I'm saying? My fault, I need something to drink. So that's my rant on the racism shit. I've talked about it before. I've talked about it a million times. And I know there's black men who I'm forgetting who are deserving of that title as well. I know it. You know, but it is what it is. I think my point is more than proven at this point. Some other stuff I want to talk about. One thing I want to talk about is Lucha Underground. Matter of fact, let me look up, just out of curiosity. Excuse me. Let me look up Lucha Underground news. AEW signing former Lucha Underground star Angelico. Yeah, a lot of wrestlers seeking their release. Everybody's trying to get released. It's bad. Essentially, it seemed like Lucha Underground is all but over. And I know a lot of people are ate up about it. I prepared myself for the end of Lucha Underground at the first episode of Lucha Underground. Reason being is, in the wrestling business, good things can't last forever. No long-time wrestling fan could disagree with me there. Good things cannot last forever. That's why the product has been so stale for so long. Good things can't last forever in this piece of shit business. They just can't. ECW, I got the network. You know, I love to watch the Vault, and we're gonna get into the Vault in a minute. I watch ECW and what it was, and I laugh at everyone who's ever tried to recreate ECW, because they focus on the violent aspect of ECW and not what ECW was. ECW was like a riot, not just violent. It was like a riot. Like, it's not just like hitting a nigga with a light tube and like, that's not what ECW is. Yeah, there was extreme wrestling, but at the core of ECW, you had pure wrestling. RVD versus Jerry Lynn. You understand what I'm saying? That's what characterizes ECW for me. Taz versus Bam Bam Bigelow. It was just like a riot, the way it was presented, the way it would go from Joey Styles with the mic in the back, and then it would just cut to just a raging crowd. A white hot raging crowd. And just shocking action, whether it be pure wrestling or hardcore. That's what ECW was. It wasn't. What made it was not all the weapons and the violence. What the violence, yeah, but the weapons and shit. So when people try to recreate ECW, they just bring hella weapons out. And that's not what it was. Or even when you had WWE ECW, the presentation of WWE ECW was no different than the presentation of Raw and SmackDown. That's the problem. You watch ECW, Hardcore TV, ECW on TNN, the way it was presented, a mashup of clips from various events and things like that whole presentation. If you're not presenting it like that, how can you say it's like ECW or this is ECW? You can't. That's not what it is. It's just some shit that's got some weapons and some hardcore shit. But that's not ECW, bro. So good things, I say all that to say good things in wrestling can't last. So Lucha Underground was great for 3 seasons. I watched maybe the first 2, at least the first episode of season 4. And I was so upset at what I was looking at that I haven't watched. I didn't watch the rest of season 4. I just found out Jack Swagger's a goddamn Lucha Underground champion. I don't know how in the hell that happened. But season 4 started off as such a shell to me of what the first 3 seasons are. I knew that was the beginning of it. And then now we're at the end of 4, and it looks like 5 ain't even going to happen. If it do happen, it's going to be an even more different look than 4 was. So they really better off just cutting it now. Even though it doesn't sit right with me that the white boy is the last Lucha Underground champion. That's crazy to me. And it's crazy because Johnny Mundo, it was like, all right. But like Jack Swagger, though, Lucha Underground champion? I mean, yeah, if he's going to drop the strap to Penta or something, you know, but as of right now, he would go down. If it is all over, he would go down as the last Lucha Underground champion ever. Unless they want to bring the title to Impact or something, I don't know. But good things can't last forever in this business. Lucha Underground, the first 3 seasons were so captivating, so innovative, so different. Such a great presentation. You gotta know when you watch that something like that cannot last forever. Something like that is only here for a season. And then you go and reflect on it, you recap, you watch the replays. And truthfully, its life force was extended because they took that mid-season break. And I don't think it's been the same since. So, you know, it's unfortunate. And again, I know a lot of people is ate up by it. But the fact is this. Something like that can't last forever. And all their talent is getting ate up by AEW, Impact, and WWE. Which I know if they work Impact, they could still work Lucha Underground. But I know AEW and I know definitely WWE ain't going to have that. You know, so, you know, it is what it is. And you just got to think about the good times. Because remember, in this business, I mean, the Attitude Era. Everybody thinks about the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars. That shit ended, bro. And it got bad after that. I mean, ruthless aggression was straight, but this bullshit we in now, shit. You see what I'm saying? Good shit cannot last forever. And we hoping that we're getting ready to enter into some good shit because WWE gonna have to step their shit up because they have some real competition headed their way. Just signed a TV deal with TNT, nigga. I'm having deja vu. But this is gonna be WWE's time to sink or swim again, and we're gonna see if pressure don't burst pipes and make diamonds in this instance. But let's say WWE makes it through this battle. It's gonna be a long battle because you're dealing with another motherfucker with a lot of money in this Khan motherfucker, this Pakistani nigga that owned AEW. Right? You're gonna deal with a lengthy battle. Plus they having the ratings issues. I mean, it's crazy right now. But as we can see, these stale bad times of wrestling last a whole lot longer than the 3 seasons of Lucha Underground. 6, 7 years of ECW. 4 or 5 years of the Attitude Era. Let's say 5 years. Let's say 5 years of the Attitude Era. I mean, good shit in wrestling really not only just don't last forever, really only got but 5 years. Being truthful, what can we really say was just amazingly great longer than 5 years? What promotion in the history of professional wrestling? Which one? Pick one. And I want to say this too. I talked about Disco Inferno earlier. And I'm going to say this too about Disco. He always says there isn't a wrestling boom. And he's right, if you ask me. I believe him. Because when everybody was really saying there was a boom, that was like 2 years ago. Damn near everybody that was hot on the indies is signed and not on the indies no more. Vast majority is at WWE right now. Ricochet, Matt Riddell, Keith Lee, Shane Strickland, man, who the fuck else I'm thinking about? Cedric Alexander, I said Matt Riddle, ain't I? A gang of them niggas. I don't even know who. Y'all know who. They're all at NXT now. A couple of us are on the main rosters, but they all at NXT now. And shit like that. Or at Ring of Honor too. Jeff Cobb. You see what I'm saying? Like, everybody's signed now. Only a few niggas that was super hot. When I say niggas, I'm talking about individuals in particular, irregardless of race, for the record. Regardless of race, rather. They all gone. It's only a few that's even making towns anymore and doing the indie circuit. Let's be real. Ain't no boom. The companies who I looked at, the indie promotions that I looked at 2 years ago as hot, aren't even hot no more. Aren't putting on the level of shows that they used to. Now it's kind of switched because it was a lot of the West Coast promotions that was hot. i.e. Defy, PCW, Wrestle Circus. Which Wrestle Circus has, they kind of shut down operations for a minute, but they're coming back and their card looks great. So Wrestle Circus, something you can count on with Wrestle Circus is they're going to have a great card, period. They're going to have great artwork. They do everything right. But really it's kind of shifted to the East Coast. House of Glory and Game Changer, it seemed like they're kind of the hottest indies to me. So it's switched coast. With the best cards. I just watched earlier today this Code Red Impact Plus. I signed up for Impact Plus so I could watch Code Red because I liked the card. Because the card looked like a card I would put together. So I liked it. I think that was the best indie card. And truthfully, I think it was the best wrestling show of all 2019 next to Mania. So I would say it's number 2 and only second to WrestleMania of all shows, be it indie or mainstream. And going real quick though, before I even get into that, going back to my point, there's no indie boom. Like, let's take Joey Janela Spring Break, for example. I love Joey Janela too, for the record. Not as a person, but I love his work. I want to put that out there. I like his work, right? I'm a Joey Janela mark. Always have been. He's right around my age. I can tell he and I liked a lot of the same wrestlers. Even music with the names of these GCW events, all these late 90s down south rap themes and shirts and clothing and flyers and shit like that. I'm already boom. I'm already at that wavelength. So I feel it and I love it. But his first spring break was arguably one, I'll say it, fuck it, easily a top 10 wrestling event of all time. Easy. Top 5 indie show of all time, easy. And a top 5 network era event of all time. That includes Indian network era, not of all time, of the network era. So when the network era started, 2012, easy top 5. Easy. The first Joey Janela spring break. I look at the card for this one, 3, and they did it in 2 parts. I'm like, I don't want to buy this shit. I had no problem signing up for Flow Slam to watch Joey Janela's first spring break. And that was one of the greatest events I've ever seen in my life. I love Joey Janela's spring break, the first one. And then I look at the new ones like, man, what the hell happened? But it's like, I understand because it's not a lot out there that was out there 2 years ago. Right? So let's look at this. Joey Janela, spring break, 3 card. Right here. Boom. Already popping up. Right? Joey Janela, spring break, 3, part 1. They did 2 parts. Seems like a little overkill, to be honest with me. Honest with you. Right? So here we have Masashi Takeda versus defeats Jimmy Lloyd. Huh? Virgil defeats Ethan Page in 3 seconds. Okay, I'll take that. Taka Michinoku defeats Orange Cassidy. I've been here seeing this Orange Cassidy name. I don't know about it, so I ain't gonna knock him. The Invisible Man defeats Invisible Stan. I'm sure that was great and entertaining, right? GCW title. Nick Gage defeats Shinjiro Otani. Apparently, this is one of the Japanese niggas. That's cool. I'll even take that. Jungle Boy defeats A-Kid and Australian Suicide and Jake Atlas and Shane Mercer and Slim J. Huh? Tony Deppen defeats Dustin Thomas. Huh? And then Marco Stunt defeats Joey Janela. So, I would like to understand how in the fuck this even comes close to the first one. Put part 1 and fucking part 2 together and explain to me how that even competes with the first one. It doesn't. And the reason why it doesn't is because there's not the same talent available in the indies. So no, the indies can't be booming. Right? Let's take a look at this. Joey Janela spring break 1. And it's unfortunate because it's even difficult to find a lot of stuff on Joey Janela spring break. Like, it's super difficult. The first one, the great one. I mean, I felt like I was in the height of the Attitude Era, right? So let's take a look at this. The artwork was epic. Everything was just epic about it. So watch. They got the results on here, right? Okay, Sami Callihan defeated Kyle the Beast. That was an amazing match. I'm talking about amazing, right? That was ECW type of shit, right? Andy Williams, Penelope Ford defeats Braxton Southern Alley. That was another fucking ECW. Great match. They was putting them niggas through the doors and all that shit. That was great. Matt Tremont versus Eddie Kingston. That was cool. That was cool. I won't say it was great, but it was cool. It was cool. Eddie Kingston, I'm kind of iffy about. The clusterfuck was good. Leo Rush and Keith Lee was nigga epic. Joey Janela and Morty Jannetty, epic. Matt Rydell and Dan Severn. You see what I'm saying? I don't even like Matt Rydell. But this shit was epic, this first one. There was nothing like it. Then the Invisible Man, again, the clusterfuck, all of it was great. What in the fuck am I looking at with this card? It looked like bullshit to me. Let's look at part 2. Joey Janela Spring Break 3, part 2. Right? Another clusterfuck. There's some names on the clusterfuck. That might have been straight. LA Park defeats Masada Naga. That looks cool. LAX defeats the Rock and Roll Express. All right. See, part 2 I might get fuck with. Chad was in. Okay, cool. Good shit. Okay. See, I might go get part 2, but it still ain't fucking with that original one, though. Because the indies ain't booming like that. Because you got WWE eating shit up. And you getting all these niggas and put them all on you. What are you going to do with them? That's my question. What are you going to do with them? You got... And I want to talk about this. Before I still got to get in this code red. The brand split. They have pressure from Fox to end the brand split. Right? And they're acting like they can't do it. Ending the brand split, I don't want to just talk about it like, oh, it's so easy. But nigga, it is. I'm going to explain. You take all your talent. You section them off. Very simple formula. Into A, B, and C. A, B, C, cruiserweight, tag, women's. 6 sections of talent, right? All the women are in one section. All the tag teams are in one section, right? You have the tag guys who are in teams focus on building the strength and prestige of the tag team division as opposed to building their singles career, at least for the time being, until everything works out. Then you have the cruiserweights doing the cruiserweight thing, right? Then you have A, B, and C. What is A? Unify, Universal, and WWE title. Boom. A is the crop of talent that competes for that belt. Anywhere from 8 to 12 men should be able to be in that pool of A. Then you go on to B. B, they compete for the Intercontinental title, right? That pool may should be a little bit bigger, maybe 12 to 14 dudes. Then you do Group C. They compete for the United States Championship belt. That could be 12, 14, 15 cats, right? And you do it exactly like that. As opposed to splitting them up on brands, we do it like that. You now have 6 hours of television between 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, an hour of 205 Live. I say you scrap 205 Live. And I won't even say bring back motherfucking Shotgun Saturday Night. And film at house shows that you do. I'm just thinking outside the box, but this will just give you a different presentation, kind of like how the ECW Hardcore TV or ECW on TNN presentation was, where you're kind of shooting different one-on-ones or different matches at house shows, a little bit of a different environment, and have the commentators in the studio presenting it and then cutting to the matches, like how Joey Styles used to cut to the matches in ECW. Bring them motherfucking Shotgun Saturday Night back. Right? And have a crop of talent that kind of really only participates there. And I guarantee you it'll help get them hot. Because it'll be cool. It'll be the cool thing. You got to get on the network to watch it. It's cool. They're doing a little bit of different stuff on that. And then some of the main guys are coming on there too and putting these guys over and having great matches, etc. I'm telling you. But then them other 3 categories, you focus on building them 3. Making sure that within 5 to 6 hours of TV, almost everyone is getting an opportunity. You're going to have jobbers in each division, but almost everyone's getting an opportunity. Make sure you have key feuds in each section. And I'm telling you, you'll be able to end the brand split, no problem. But you want to fucking bring all this bullshit in and all these extras and all these moving parts. The wrestling business is complicated, nigga, but it's simple. And WWE knows that because they've done the greatest and put on the greatest wrestling ever. They have been the premier wrestling promotion for decades. They know how to put on wrestling, but they got to get back simple. Vince has complicated this shit too much. And he's not a progressive enough thinker. That combination of problems is working against them, and they're going to fucking lose compared to AEW. Because these are young motherfuckers. I mean, yeah, you got Khan, but these are young motherfuckers, cool, hip guys, niggas whose t-shirts on sale and Hot Topic and shit like that. They're cool, bro. They didn't need to be in your company to get their fucking tees in Hot Topic. That should tell you something, motherfucker. They're cool. I'm gonna tell you something. I went to the crash in Tijuana, Mexico, where the Young Bucks was there, right? I watched every white person that had the nerve to step into that ring get showered with booze and greeted with hatred from the Mexican crowd, except the goddamn Young Bucks. So you know what that tells me? These motherfuckers are so over that we have anti-white sentiments going around this building, right? Goddamn, Damien 666 get on the right mic and say, I want white boys out of my country. But the Young Bucks to come over there and get over. Everybody's throwing up their little sign and all that wild shit. What does that let me know? Them motherfuckers is over. I really can't stand the Young Bucks. But I can't deny the fact that they're over on a fucking global scale, on a transcultural scale. So they know what they're doing, and they got somebody that's got a big old motherfucking bank account behind them, and they getting ready to make some shit happen. And if Vince don't start thinking quick, goddammit, it's gonna be bad for him. And that's just the reality of the situation. Now, House of Glory, Impact Plus, Cold Red. That shit was hard. Again, next to Mania, the greatest show so far of 2019, hands down. It's going to be hard to top. And, of course, that's my own subjective opinion. I take a look at that card. I take a look at who's booked. It's exactly who I want to see on the card. It's exactly the matchups I want to see. I love everything about it. God damn it, I thought I booked it. Except some of the finishes. I want to book the finishes that way. Difference between me and a lot of motherfuckers. But as far as the matchups, exactly how I would have booked it. So I loved everything about it. And I'm looking to see more like Impact. The shit about Impact is just be like, damn, I feel like Impact is fighting such an uphill battle. They're so far down the hill. They be getting up the hill, and we know Impact's never going to get ahead. And then for them to be on fucking this bullshit ass prestige channel, and I don't even know where the fuck I can watch that shit at. So now I got to get it on this fucking Impact Plus, and it's just Impact change, and it changes too much. And Impact, man, we want to fuck with y'all, man, but I don't know. Let's be honest. AEW got a better shot. It is what it is. We still love Impact. We still gonna watch Impact though, right? At least sometimes. I really don't be watching. I don't keep up with everything. Period. Can't tell you what the fuck happened on Raw and SmackDown this week. I don't know. Right, but shout out Impact, man. Especially for doing that and thinking outside the box and being progressive. We're going to always appreciate Impact for them facts. Right? But now, what I wanted to start to do was, now I'm bringing the podcast back, I want to go 20 years ago and watch that week's lineup of shows from 20 years ago. And talk about it and kind of review it, right? So, I got this idea last week. It's May 10th already, so I'm already goddamn behind. But, it takes time. Shit takes time. So, I started April 26th, 1999. That's the 309th episode of Raw. Off top, this is one of my favorite Raws ever of all time. Easily top 3, if not number 1. I'm going to really find out because I'm going back over this, watching it. 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, like that's when the nigga was really, really, really into wrestling, when I'm 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. So, yeah, I'm going to have to, Lord's will, I'm going to go over these things and really kind of make a list, but this is one of my favorite Raws, nigga, ever. The next one might also be one of my favorites. This time was so great. So, to set the backdrop, this is the Raw following the Backlash where Austin went over The Rock. Shane tried to screw Austin, backfire. Austin still ends up going over clean. And then Stephanie gets kidnapped by The Undertaker. Right? So this is the Raw that's going in there. It opens up. We got Jim Cornette and JR on commentary, which I'm marking out for because it's crazy, right? Like, I used to have when a family friend got me a gift, back in the day, people was card collecting. I'm sure people still do it, but I haven't seen a card collector so goddamn long. People was card collecting, and somebody had got me wrestling cards, WWE, and WCW, and I had a Jim Cornette card. And I'm telling you right now, I seen the Jim Cornette card, I seen him with this fucking tennis racket, and for the life of me, I'm like, who the fuck is, I don't know who the fuck this dude is. And then now I'm seeing this, I'm like, damn, this nigga called my fucking favorite Raw. This is crazy, right? And so I kind of marked out for that a little bit. You know, I like Jim Cornette's commentary. I like his gimmick and, you know, his character in wrestling. You know, and it was kind of refreshing not to hear the King, Jerry Lawler. Not that I dislike his commentary, but it was just good to not hear it. I don't know, I guess. I like that. You know, Rock comes out to start the show hot. I'm talking about the pops that Rock and Austin used to get, bro. There's not a motherfucker out that can get that kind of pop. I mean, them two niggas was getting astronomical pops, period. Can't nobody get a pop like them. Nobody. Right? But it was crazy is as loud as a pop as Rock got, Austin always got louder. Right? And anybody who knows me knows I'm partial. I'm a bigger fan of Austin than the Rock. I liked Austin better. Austin was more influential on him, but they both was, you know, was up there. You know, all of us in the hood, we like Rock and Austin. We like DX. We like NWO. We like all the motherfuckers that was badass. You know what I'm saying? But there wasn't a nigga really badder than Austin. I mean, come on, the motherfucker had BMF, bad motherfucker, on his vest. You have to be versed in blaxploitation to even know what BMF mean. And then what's crazy is a couple years later, a group of niggas come together and form an organization called BMF, and they show getting ready to come out. That's even iller, right? But Rock had the out. He came out, remember, with his Miami Coke dealer outfit on, man. Remember, he used to come out with the nigga with the Versace shirts and the shades and shit, looking like $1 million, man. That just, I mean, you got to mark out for that. That shit's amazing. There's nothing like that. You know, and he was and this was a time where Rock was over as a face and Austin was over as a face, but Austin's over, he's the most over motherfucker of all time, more over than Hulk, Rock, everybody, Cena, everybody. So they're both faces here, and he comes out burying, and he gets a standing ovation, but he buries Austin, he begins to get boos. To the point where they start chanting Austin's name, to the point where the Rock's promo is, you can't even hear it. They chanting Austin so hard. It's crazy, but like stuff like this is, I look back and I appreciate every moment of it, and I look now at what wrestling is and look what it was 20 years ago when I was really into it, and I realized how fucking spoiled we were during that Attitude Era and how great the product was and how much of great product. I mean, it was like, nigga, we had Blue Magic back then. That shit was 90%, 91% pure dope we was watching, and we had it. You could go to this corner and get it, then you go to the next corner, and it might have been a little less pure, but goddamn it was getting you high as hell too. And what am I talking about? WCW. You can go down in the alley and get some of that ECW work. I mean, shit was amazing, bro. It was amazing. You know, but even though they start over chanting Rock, then they start chanting for Rock because they still love Rock, but they love Austin a little bit more. Then here comes Shane, young heel hotshot Shane was great. That's the best Shane to me. That young heel hotshot talking shit, Mean Street Posse niggas with him, corporation with him, fuck pops nigga, I'm doing what the fuck I want to do. That was a great Shane, right? Confronting the Rock. You know, that was all great. Then it cuts to Vince and the Stooges. And they do a real, like, this whole thing about Stephanie being kidnapped. I felt like I was really watching a soap opera. And that's when people were using that phrase soap opera in reference to wrestling the most. And you saw like that it really was hella soap opera-esque at this time. And you don't see it as much now, but maybe they need to bring that back because this is when their ratings was hot, nigga. Maybe they need to bring that back. You know, Lucha Underground embraced the Mexican style of a soap opera, which is a telenovela, and embraced that at their height and peak, and it worked well for them. So I don't understand, and it worked well for WWE. So the soap opera aspect actually, though used to poke fun at wrestling, actually works for wrestling. So maybe it's something they need to bring back. You know, then the Brew come out, man. I forget the Brew's music. The Brew's music is one of the top entrance songs of all time. Challenge me on that. The Bruise music was hard, nigga. You kidding me? So I like seeing that. Then the Brew was going against Konan X-Pac, which Konan X-Pac was always one of my favorite tag teams together because there was that odd couple, just a random pairing them two together. They worked a great fucking match. Kane was tripping, choke slamming X-Pac on the niggas and shit like that. It was great, man. That whole shit was great. Then Kane gets the bloodbath after the match. I missed bloodbaths, man. Remember when niggas would just randomly get a bloodbath? Gangrel be creeping somewhere, nigga just randomly blackout, lights come on and motherfuckers covered in blood. That's the shit we miss, man. We don't get shit like that no more. Then here comes Austin. Motherfucking roof blow off that bitch. And he had the smoking skull belt. So you know I'm marking. I'm this whole shit I'm marked out. As soon as I press play and I hear the WWF flash, I'm already in mark mode. Full suspension of disbelief. Full, I think everything's a fucking shoot. Fuck it. You know what I'm saying? Great, right? What else we got? Vince coming to ask Austin for help, man. God, man. That shit was so amazing. Vince coming and banging Stone Cold Steve Austin for help to get his daughter back. And Austin can refuse and tell him to kiss his ass and everyone pops. Suspension of disbelief. This man's child's life is in danger and Stone Cold Steve Austin is the only person that can fucking help. Yet he refuses, tells the man to kiss his ass, and 20,000 people still scream at the top of their lungs in approval of it. That's fucking, you gotta analyze that. That's fucking crazy. And it's also great and amazing. It's also fucking amazing. This is a time before everybody is familiar with the fact that this shit is a work. And people still chant and cheer for the fact that Austin don't give a fuck about this nigga daughter. That's great. That is really great. And Austin was so over, that was just proof that there's nothing that he could have did to fuck that up. Nothing he could have did. They still gonna blow the roof off for Austin. Right? Then the next match on the card, I believe, is D'Lo Brown. D'Lo comes out. He also got one of the best entrance music of all time, just with the repeated loop of, I think you better recognize. I think you better recognize. I always am a mark for that because that shit is just hilarious to me. That they just loop, I think you better recognize, and that's that nigga entrance music. He performed an amazing match, per usual. Then they have fucking Nicole Bass, somebody I wish I could have forgot about. I wish I could have forgot the sight of goddamn Nicole Bass, that monstrosity. Right? She had that thing going with Val Venus during that time. Then they have Hardcore Holly versus Al Snow, which was a great hardcore match. After that, they had that Mosh nigga. Who remembers when they used to do the weird, when Mosh got repackaged and they had like the Leave It to Beaver incest vignettes? Them shits was always pointless and stupid to me, and he never came out to be shit any fucking way, so I don't even understand the point of that. That must have been some Vince Russo shit, now that I think about it. Just some retarded shit. Then what else we got on? Oh yeah, Double J come out. His music was always great. I always loved Double J's music. His Don't Piss Me Off shirt. Deborah come out. I'm always going to mark out for all of that. I marked out even harder when Godfather came. He had a hard-ass outfit on that night, too. Had the whole train. They worked a great match. Deborah wanted to become a hoe for Godfather. Then here come Owen Hart with the fucking cape on. He wasn't even Blue Blazer. The nigga had the cape on. And two, then you have Shamrock later. Shamrock comes out with that Madman gimmick. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Looking back, it's impossible to take in Shamrock serious. It's crazy that he's the shooter out of everybody. He's a legit MMA fighter. And if you look at that whole Raw, that motherfucker is the hardest person to take serious. Crazy how shit worked, right? It ended with the classic Unholy Matrimony, Austin Saves the Day. It was just great. It was just great. If you haven't watched it, get the network. April 26th, 1999, Raw number 309, right? I give it overall 4 stars. Let's go to Nitro now. Same date. April 26, 1999. Okay, it opens up with an absolutely retarded Ric Flair in the Nut House skit. It was stupid. It was absolutely stupid, right? I wish they would have never did it. Okay? Then here comes Roddy Piper. I'm going to be real with you. I never could stand that motherfucker Roddy Piper. I never liked him fucking kilts. Never liked his goddamn voice. And I'm just being honest. Just because this motherfucker dead don't mean I have to like him. Or I had to like what he did I never liked Roddy Piper. So it starts off bad. Ric Flair doing some retarded shit and then Roddy Piper. Right? But guess what? Here comes K-Dog. We got K-Dog and Brian Adams coming in. This is when they're NWO. Or I think actually K-Dog had just left NWO. Brian Adams was still NWO. Truthfully, I liked them as Filthy Animals and Chronic way better in that mode. They were just better versions of themselves during that time. But it's always good to see K-Dog, right? I loved when Stevie Ray was leading NWO, though. That's good. Everybody know I'm a huge Stevie Ray fan and Mark, period. Raven came. Raven had a match, and I'm going to be honest with you. Arguably, Raven's work in WCW was his best work. I know most people are going to say ECW, but I'm going to be real. What he was doing in WCW, I think that might have been him at his best, at his peak. Okay, and I wanted to debate somebody on that, and I could be wrong. And as I go back over the ECW tapes, I may debunk myself, but goddamn it, his shit in WCW was gold on this Nitro. I'm going to tell you that now. Then DDP had to put the strap up against Sting. I'm always a fan of a world title match in the middle of a weekly show. Unannounced random, I'm a huge fan of that. Because it makes the shit seem more real. Sting and DDP worked a fucking great match. Had a great finish. That match in the middle of Nitro was better than any match on Raw, hands down. That Raw from that same week, that match in the middle of Nitro was better than the whole Raw as far as matches and wrestling work go. Okay, it's what a title match should look like, hands down. Then we go on to who was working. It was a lucha match. I forget who was working, but it was good. From what I recall of it, it was good. That was the original American presentation of lucha in WCW, and that was always great. Period. Then we go to Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash in rings I always mark out for. Brief story. When I was young, I forget, I had to be 10, 11. And I was over at my grandma's house. And my mom called my grandma's house at 3 in the morning. I'm asleep. My grandma answered like, man, this dude is asleep. Actually, I might not have been asleep now that I think about it, but my grandma thought I was asleep. My mom met this motherfucker Kevin Nash at the club, man. And she was calling me with Kevin Nash. And to this day, I'm mad as hell. I ain't get a chance to talk to Nash. And I was going to be a total fucking mark. And, talk to him about something that had just happened on Nitro. Like it was a fucking shoot. I forget what it was, man. But yeah, so I'm always a Kevin Mark. But yeah, he had a great in-ring. Then here come Bam Bam Bigelow, which I thought Bam Bam was in ECW at this time. He might have even been doing both because, there was ECW was having a lot of crossover shit going on. But Bam Bam is off top one of my favorites all time. So I always love seeing Bam Bam work. He was a tremendous worker. He was good on the mic. I love Bam Bam Bigelow. Ming was in action, another one of my favorites. Him and Booker wrestling, man. I never saw that, man. And they worked a great match. And it was during the time where Booker T was having that strong TV title run. And I'll say this about WCW. They truly used Booker T properly and brought him up properly and thoroughly through strong title defenses. First, they gave him that strong TV title run, into a strong U.S. title run, into multiple strong WCW title runs, and even made him the last true WCW champion and WCW U.S. champion of all time. They truly did a great work with Booker T, I'll say that. And not to mention all his tag team title runs. Not to mention that too. Right? There was somebody I was thinking about comparing him to also. And how he kind of, came up through the ranks. But he's a tag TV, WCW quadruple crown. I don't know many other people that are quadruple crowns in anything, in any organization. So yeah, big up Booker, man. That was a great match. And the thing is this: what I noticed after I watched the Booker T Ming match, it dawned on me that the roster and the wrestling was way better on WCW Nitro. Way better. The roster looked better. They had a deeper roster, and they had way better wrestling. What they didn't have was The Rock, Austin, and Undertaker. They didn't have that. So that's and it's kind of fucked up when you think about it, because Rock, Austin, and to a lesser extent Taker, just as a good heel to be there and have a captivating aura, right? But really, it was mostly Rock and Austin. And this is during the time when WWE is in the lead now. They're whooping WCW ass on a weekly basis, deep into whooping their ass on a weekly basis as far as ratings go, right? On Monday nights, in the Monday Night War. And it was really just based on Rock and Austin. And having these two great personas, these personas that are like pretty much almost damn near once in a lifetime, having them on the roster and propelling them to where they needed to be won the war for WWE. I'm looking at WCW, I'm watching, go and watch Nitro, watch this very same Nitro, and watch this very same Raw, and take a look at the roster and the in-ring action. WCW got these motherfuckers by a landslide. I'm in the first hour, I done see DDP and Sting wrestle a fucking gem for the WCW World title, and a title exchange hands in the first hour. Let's go back to the first hour of Raw. What I see in the first hour of Raw, let's go up. I see Rock having in ring. I see Shane come out. I see a soap opera scene. I see one tag match. I see Austin have an in ring. Vince come and beg Austin. Then I see D'Lo have a match. And a monstrosity named fucking Nicole Bass. Versus the first hour of Nitro. I see fucking Booker T and Ming wrestle a gym. Then I see a title change hands between Sting and DDP. Who's putting on a better show? Truthfully, wrestling-wise, who has more resources to put on a better wrestling show because they have a deeper roster? WCW. Yet somehow, the fucking soap opera shit is outweighing wrestling for what wrestling is. Which is crazy, but it is what it is. So if the name of the game is the soap opera, Vince, maybe you should fucking step the soap opera back up. Because it doesn't make any sense why I'm seeing this level of wrestling on Nitro and they're getting their ass whooped on by Raw outside of two niggas. Rock and Austin. Period. Right? Moving back. The match ends with Stevie Ray coming out with the slapjack, which I'm always going to super mark out for. Also, then they have a hardcore match, and I think WCW even presented a better hardcore product than the match I saw between Hardcore Holly and Al Snow, or any of the hardcore matches that were taking place at that time in WWE. I think when, I was going to say when the 24/7 rule came out, it gave WWE the edge because that was some really fun stuff that was happening, but in truth, when the 24/7 rule came out, WCW even raised the bar again with the hardcore shit. Remember Terry Funk was driving niggas to the farm, jumping off the top of the farm, all kind of wild shit, hitting a nigga with a wheelbarrow. So I think WCW always had them beat on the hardcore edge as well. Now that I'm thinking about it. So but notice how much great, good shit that I have to approve of that I'm talking about of one night of wrestling. You can't do this no more, man. We were fucking spoiled rotten during this time period, man. Big Papa Pump on the mic is always great. He's not great on the mic, but it's fucking hilarious. Then comes Macho Man. I'm marking out for Big Papa Pump. Now I'm marking out for Macho Man. I'm just marking out left and right on Nitro, right? Then we have the main event. The title's back on the line. Sting's putting it back up. This nigga hit a fucking triple stinger splash. Got to mark out for that. But also in that main event, I was familiarized with the fact that Goldberg, which I didn't realize, I've heard, but I'm not realizing now until I'm really revisiting, Goldberg was really not that great of a worker. That shit really dawned on me in this main event. He's in there with Sting and DDP and who else was in there? Was Nash in there? I forget who the fourth dude was. He's not in their league, man, as far as working ability. He's not. He was propelled there, but he wasn't in that league. And he was outclassed, quite frankly. And he was outclassed a lot, I'm starting to find out. Which again I've heard, but I didn't. It didn't really dawn on me until now. I like the fact that Macho Man came and screwed Goldberg out of the title, and it led to a good dirty finish. And DDP retained the belt, so we saw the title change hands 2 times in one night. Some people may not like that. I personally liked it. I like that booking. I think it was a great fucking show. I give that Nitro 4 stars. Now Raw got a 6 rating that night. Nitro got a 3.9 rating that night, right? But as we can see, Raw lacked in-ring, but Nitro lacked in story. Both had strong shows, but it seems like the story outweighs the in-ring, which it is what it is. I'm not even arguing with that. But if that's the case, then what WWE needs to do now and what every company needs to do now is work on story, period. Work on story, because it seems like that's what puts more eyeballs on the product, right? Then I watched ECW Hardcore TV. It was from 2 days prior, so it was April 24th. And it's crazy. It starts with the intro text says that from the city where OJ cut through defense like he was married to him, Buffalo, New York. I mean, you might get 5 stars based on that alone. That's has to be one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life, right? And then of course it's just ECW and the feel and the raucous crowd and the presentation of it, which I've already talked about 100 times over the course of this podcast, so y'all understand how much I like that. So I'm always gonna mark out for that. The FBI was always a great heel stable. They let off against Balls and Axel, who were also always entertaining. So that was a cool match. Then we got Candido and Kaz, which are 2 of my favorites in the ring. And I don't recall ever seeing them go one-on-one and wrestle. So that was great. Brutally beat the fuck out of Candido while he was on a stretcher. While the crowd chanted "Fuck you, Taz." That's what ECW is. Not you can't recreate that. It just chemically, all the components were there to cause the chain reaction that was ECW. That was great, beating this nigga ass while the crowd is screaming, "Fuck you, Taz." And I could hear it on my TV. There's nothing like that. You can't recreate that, not in this time, right? Then we have Taka and S.A. Rio. And what's crazy is they had a great match, and I realized that I watched them wrestle plenty of times, especially on Shotgun Saturday Night, and I've never seen them work at that level. What does that let me know? That they were never allowed to work at that level in WWE. Being a further testament to the lack of emphasis on in-ring work that WWE was having during that time, yet they were leading the world in professional wrestling. I think maybe that's why they re-emphasized it being sports entertainment, because it was more entertainment than anything else. Then D'Lo wrestled RVD solo, and that was great. Seeing D'Lo in the solo capacity, which I haven't seen a lot of, especially against RVD of all people. It was a great showcase and a beautiful clusterfuck. It was what a clusterfuck is supposed to be, and what ECW was great at doing, creating beautiful clusterfucks of professional wrestling action. There was a Van Daminator or Van Terminator. It was a Van Daminator, which I always mark out for authentic Van Daminators, and especially Van Terminators. And I would say overall the in-ring action surpassed Raw and Nitro that night, right? So I give ECW Hardcore TV April 24th 4 stars also for the wrestling action, right? So as we can see, ECW and WCW were putting far better in-ring products together, yet WWE was winning by a fucking landslide. Crazy, right? Now, getting to the last, oh no, there's 2 more shows, right? We got the first ever SmackDown pilot, right? Now, backstory, I remember missing most of this show. I was out with my family, and I only caught the main event. So it's great to actually be able to go back and watch this. And I remember too, every week for consecutive weeks until I finally gave up. It might have been a month or 2 before I gave up. I was checking back for SmackDown to be on UPN, and it just wasn't. And I didn't understand what was going on. Of course, this is the time before the internet is big and before we could read up on things and understand that that was just a pilot and then it was going to come back on in a few months or whatever. I was checking for it. Where the hell is this SmackDown shit at? This shit is great. Right? So, that night was the true birth of the corporate ministry. So that was amazing to see that. First ever SmackDown, the pilot of SmackDown. You see the corporate ministry born. It's also the first time I ever actually recall seeing the Blue Blazer in action. I never recall watching him wrestle before. So seeing the Blue Blazer wrestle, that was interesting. I believe he died not too long after that as well. And then he put on that cape literally for Deborah when she was trying to voluntarily join the whole train again. Which is, again, hilarious. He was god-awful on the mic, though. Blue Blazer was horrible on the mic. And I really don't like the gimmick at all, man. And it's sad that such an unlikable gimmick led to what it led to. Moving on, though. The thing about the matches, man, and how it hurt him is these matches are too quick. You got Test in the Big Show. That match was probably like 2 minutes long. But it was good to see the formative stages of the Union, which I always liked the Union stable. The Rock had a great in-ring, but then the glass shatter when the glass shatters, man, it's on another level when Austin comes out. When that glass breaks, people lose their goddamn minds, man. And what was hilarious too is, so Rock is in the middle of his in-ring. Mind you, this is a night where they're bitter rivals who are forced to team together to go against the corporate ministry, right? For those of y'all that are not familiar. So when he's coming down that ramp, Austin that is, he comes in the ring and he does his thing, y'all. Y'all know how the Austin entrance is. He's got to hit all 4 corners and flip everybody off. As he's walking to each corner, he makes sure to each, in particular individual corner, he makes sure to flip Austin. Flip the Rock the Bird every time as he's walking to each corner, man, which is fucking great. This shit is golden, man. You're never going to get no shit like this again. I don't know what they're going to try to do in AEW or how WWE is going to try to step it up to combat AEW, but I'm telling you right now, it's not going to fuck with this shit here. This shit here is once in an ever type shit. Going on. And then D'Lo wrestled Draws actually on this SmackDown, which is, it's crazy to watch them work knowing, that there was a match where they worked and Draws was paralyzed forever, so that was crazy. But D'Lo has some of the best work ever. It was a great way for Mark Henry to return. Also, he had a run in at the end when Draws and Prince Albert were jumping D'Lo, and that was a great way for Henry to come back. Then we have X-Pac and Kane versus the New Age Outlaws, which was a great in-ring match. It's like the crazy thing was Raw was kind of lackluster with the matches, and then the first half of SmackDown was too. But then the second half of SmackDown, you got D'Lo and Draws, which was great work. Then you got X-Pac and Kane versus New Age Outlaws, which is also great work. So it's like the first half of SmackDown was like focused on story, and the second half was really on the in-ring action, which was good because WWE again was lacking in-ring during this time. Then Michael Hayes had an in-ring. And looking at Michael Hayes now, knowing what he said to Mark Henry about I'm more of a nigga than you or whatever, that's just crazy. I can't look at Michael Hayes the same. But he interviewed Gangrel on there. And I used to always wonder why Gangrel never went further, just because his look and his in-ring ability, I always thought he could be a top heel. But once I heard that motherfucker on the mic, I understood why he never went further. He was fucking horrible. He was god awful on that guy. He needs to shut the fuck up, close that hideous fucking trap, and just wrestle, and they should have had somebody to handle him. It's a wonder now. It's no wonder now that Edge and Christian became top guys in that company, but Gangrel never did when he was the leader of that stable. That motherfucker was horrible on the mic. You had the Shamrock and Bradshaw hardcore match, which was great, even though Shamrock had this fucking unbelievable character. It was a great match. And then the main event was epic. It was super hot. It capped off with 2 stunners. That was amazing, man. So I suggest y'all go check that SmackDown pilot out. What else now? Okay, the last show of the week that I checked out was Thunder from April 29, 1999. Booker T came out, had a match with who the hell did Booker wrestle? I forget. But, just watching him, he's easily top 5 all-time athlete to become a wrestler. He was like a fucking LeBron James of his day, man. Amazing to watch. Amazing to watch. He had a nice, lengthy, action-packed title match just to open up the show, which was great. WCW definitely, again, to further emphasize this, had the wrestling right. Exciting wrestling that fans loved, man. Got to see Stevie Ray come out, hit the nigga with another slapjack 2 times in 1 week. That's epic. Got to mark out for that. Him yelling at the camera was epic, calling motherfuckers fruit booties and all the shit he used to do. That shit was so great, man. You just ain't got shit like that now. Then they had Sandman come out, which his character was Hack. It was just horrendous. He was creepy as fuck on the mic. Hack was a retarded goddamn name. Sandman had no business in WCW. They shouldn't have had him there. He should have stayed in ECW where he flourished and was himself, where he could smoke cigarettes and drink beer and be the Sandman. Him in WCW was fucking atrocious, quite frankly. When then Stevie Ray had a match, it was a typical NWO screw job, done totally right, executed perfectly, great shit. Then Kevin Nash, who did Kevin Nash wrestle hardcore? This nigga Hack, my friend Sandman. It was great. Kevin was great in the hardcore setting. Then in the second half of the match, though, Kevin was great, but at the same time, Sandman doing a job the way he was doing in the first half of the match, it was like a total exploitation of ECW talent. That's why I say he ain't had no business there, really. He should have stayed in ECW. I just felt like dudes was being used. Just like when TNA had brought in New Jack, and they just brought his ass in to take a 20-fucking-foot bump and then never used his ass again. Like, you're just exploiting ECW talent at this point to do extreme shit and get your guys who are already over even further over. It's fucking stupid to me, but whatever. And Kevin's table bump was fucking uneventful. Even Larry Zbyszko ass pointed it out. But overall, the match was cool. We have Goldberg versus Ming. It was explosive, but it was really anticlimactic. Ming getting squashed is so unrealistic and so impossible, being that he shoot is a badass, that the match just overall wasn't good. The fact that Goldberg hit the jackhammer on him, there's no level of suspension of disbelief that will allow me to believe that. Ming, every day of the week, would have reversed that jackhammer and the match should have went on longer, but instead they were just trying to force Goldberg over. And, it worked. Don't get me wrong. Goldberg got over. The people loved him. He was the closest thing they had to a larger-than-life outside of like a Hogan or a Sting. But I don't know. I feel like the match should have went on longer, and I feel like he should have earned that W in a better fashion than that. Then DDP has some fucking interview in ring. He's the world champion. He has a garbage-ass interview with Mean Gene. He was a bad heel. He had no business being heel. He was a bad heel, just like Goldberg was a bad heel. Certain dudes really just shouldn't be heel, just like Austin. Austin was a good heel, but it ended up kind of being bad, right? So certain dudes just should never really be heel, to be honest. But even though he had a bad interview, his title match with Bam Bam Bigelow, the hardcore match for the strap, was exciting. Basically, the title got defended 3 times in 1 week. That's great. That's old shit that they don't do no more. That would be good and help add prestige to that belt than just, this nigga just defended it once a month and shit like that. That's bullshit, really. A Macho Man came out for a match, him and Gorgeous George. I was always a fan, but the match was garbage. I forget who he worked, but it was horrible, man. He had no business in the ring at that point. They really should have just had him. They should have had him announcing. I think Bam Bam Bigelow botched the table bump though. I forgot about that. He botched the table bump. Um, but even though he botched the table bump when DDP took the glass tray and busted over his head, that kind of compensated for it. But overall, I think the finish of that title match between DDP and Bam Bam Bigelow was bullshit. And he could have been screwed in a more conducive way, I think so. But overall, I would give that a goddamn. How many stars I give that? I give that a 4 too. Truthfully, I give that a 4. I give every show that week. I give that whole week 4 stars. I don't even think I can give a week nowadays more than 2. So we certainly were spoiled 20 years ago, man, with professional wrestling. Without a doubt, we were overwhelmingly spoiled. And now we're deprived. Those of us that grew up during that time or recall that time, now we're fucking deprived and we're being shoveled shit. And it's depressing. It's thoroughly depressing to watch what was being presented to us as professional wrestling as a product 20 years ago versus now. It's fucking depressing, man. It's depressing. But yeah, I wanted to go over all that. I'm going to end this episode now. But look for more episodes, man. I'm going to have my other guests on. We're going to talk about more current stuff about what's going on in wrestling. As opposed to me just reliving the glory days so much. But I'm still making it a point to keep up with 20 years ago and what was going on in wrestling then, because that's when the wrestling was fucking bearable to watch. All right, so with that, I'm going to give all praise to the Most High God, Yahweh. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son of the world, called Christ, Yahweh Shai. It's your brother, the Guerrilla Hebrew, a.k.a. Chief Zorilla, signing out.